Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers, and you are in season 6 of Wrestling at Random, where the theme is more wrestling than ever, somehow more wrestling than the more wrestling than ever from season 5. That is the case once again this week as the randomizer, which has upwards of 60,000 hours of professional wrestling in it. We run the randomizer, pulls a show, and it pulled an episode of NAWA. This is not NWA. This is not AWA. This is NAWA, the North American Wrestling Alliance or Association, whatever it
Association,
is.
Yep.
Association, there you go. So there's a little bit of AWA vibes in this. There's actually a lot of AWA vibes from a crowd size standpoint in terms of late stage AWA, but it is NAWA TV, airing July 28th, 1990.
Like you mentioned, we fire up the randomizer. It has so many shows, so many territories from all over the world, from any time period. And wow, this is one I can say I had never heard of. I had never heard of the NAWA. Sometimes when the randomizer pulls something, I then have to go and pull it up and say, is this a thing? Is this a show? Is it just one match? Is it, what is it? And I pulled it up and it's a TV show.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay, this is a TV show I've never heard of. I had to do some research to find out about this North American Wrestling Association. The North American Wrestling Association was founded by George Scott, John Ringley, and Mike Lamberth in January of 1990.
So George Scott, we should just mention, like the early part of 1989 still, he was he not the booker for WCW? And that early part of 1989 that was so disastrous that tanked business, then from a critical standpoint, the second half of 1989, one of our favorite periods in wrestling, probably didn't do as well as it would have if business hadn't been tanked so much by George Scott.
That's right. And he was out during the transition from Jim Crockett Promotions to Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling. And here he is starting a promotion. The first event for this promotion was it was held in Sumter, South Carolina, which is the location of this television taping as well. The first event took place February 8th, 1990. Matches from those shows aired on television in March and April of 1990. George Scott and his partners, they hope to revive the NWA's old Mid-Atlantic wrestling territory, which traditionally covered Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. After securing key television markets in the Carolinas, the promotion signed contracts with all the old Jim Crockett Promotion arenas to hold pro wrestling shows on a regular basis. The North American Wrestling Association ended up changing its name to South Atlantic Pro Wrestling, SAPW, in 1990 as part of a rebranding effort. In July of 1990, Paul Jones and Frank Dusek took over the promotion, and they negotiated a deal with America One Network to air South Atlantic Pro Wrestling on Friday nights later on that year. The promotion had a brief association with WWC in Puerto Rico after Manny Fernandez became SAPW's booker in August of 91. In spite of a strong start, the promotion operated at a loss during its first 6 months in business. George Scott lost an estimated $600,000 before deciding to cut his losses and retire to Florida. There was a noticeable drop in quality after the original investors pulled out. Many of the promotion's top stars left the area. South Atlantic Pro Wrestling remained in a Friday night death slot on television throughout its 2-year run. Jones and Dusek eventually sold SAPW to North Carolina promoter Greg Price, who ran the promotion during its final year. Its last official show was held in North Carolina on August 1st, 1992. I wonder if Your co-host on the Big Audio Nightmare, Mike Sempervive, knows or has seen this television show when it was airing in the Mid-Atlantic area.
I would not be surprised. I'm sure he's seen it. This is one of those promotions that I was aware of from the magazines. You'd see pictures from time to time. You'd get the occasional story, particularly because they did have a couple relatively big stars, at least early on. But I've never actually seen an episode of TV. It looks like they taped 4 episodes of television on May 26, 1990, which then aired in July. In the case of this one, this was the last of the 4 episodes that they taped. It was in Sumter, South Carolina.
At the Sumter County Exhibition Center.
Yes, and as I look at the other shows, it was a relatively small roster that wrestled several matches on there. Like there's a few guys that we'll see in promos that we don't see in matches, but really outside of Chris Chavis, the future Tatanka, he's really the only star, quote unquote, that was on the other tapings on this live show that is not on the show that we're going to that we watched and that we're going to review.
Let's get into it because there was, you talk about a small roster. There was just as many people in the seats as there are on the roster. This was a sparse crowd here at the end of a long taping.
Very sparse crowd. I'd actually be really interested to see if there's significantly more people at the start of this taping of 4 one-hour television shows.
Every single taping in Sumter that I looked up in the Observer newsletters had about an average of 30 people.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's not even, the front row isn't even full all the way around. It's very, very darkened, but you can still see the rows and rows and rows of empty seats immediately behind the front row. You can also just kind of barely make out the sort of the arena seating, if you want to call it that. And you can tell there are not many people, even though it's quite darkened as well. They do get into it, though. The front row fans on the hard camera side, there's some kids. They get fired up, particularly with one of the acts that comes out later. The show opens with a very 80s music open, and we get our commentary team of Ted Webb and Gene Ligon, a name that we've heard throughout the years this podcast, working throughout this area. They run down the card, including, of all things, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is on this show. I was not expecting that when I pulled this up.
So they're running down the list of names, and these are actual names for 1990. Like, these are guys. And I was like, okay, let's do this, NAWA. I'm impressed.
Not like past their prime guys working a territory. I mean, we're in between a couple major runs for Ricky Steamboat. We're just off of the 1989 WCW run. We're just before him coming back to the company in 1991. And here he is, among many others. A ring announcer, by the way. We'll get to him.
We'll let the other names wash over you, like because he was running down this roster, and I'm like, all right, let's see what we got. And
you had some money at the very beginning, and I'm sure it, like you said, it ran out. Ring announcer Fabian Fuentes tells us that the team coming out is Spike and Rex, the American Bulldogs. They have truly horrendous music that just says, "We put the bite on you," over and over again, dubbed over whatever they actually came out to.
Oh, no. I'm like, my God, this theme song. We're going to take a listen to it right now.
This section is Tag Team Action. Making their way to the ring right now, weighing a combined 550 pounds, here are Spike and Rex, the American Bulldogs.
Put the fight on, put the fight on, put the fight on you. Put the fight on, put the fight on, put the fight on you.
Do you know?
Horrible.
Yeah, so beyond terrible. Beyond terrible. TNA would say, man, you need to improve your music. Do you know who the American Bulldogs are?
When I saw them, I said, these guys look like these guys. I'm gonna look it up because I don't trust that they. I don't. I want to know if they're adjacent to that. Maybe one half of the team. No, they are the team. I know who they are. Tell the people who they are.
They are the Pitbulls. Pitbull 1 and Pitbull 2 of ECW fame, and what an interesting career they had. Just in the sense of like you really like only associate them with ECW, but they did some enhancement talent matches under their full real names, Gary Wolf and Tony Durante, in the WWF in 1989, wrestling against the Hart Foundation, the Twin Towers, the Brainbusters, and the Rougeos, all in losing fashion. But as a team, they did this NAWA stuff in 1990. They had tours with New Japan Pro Wrestling as the Mad Bull Busters in 1991 and 1992. And then had their ECW run in the mid to late 90s, did some XPW in 1999. They even had, let's see here, they had one WWF match on Shotgun Saturday Night, not the cool nightclub version of Shotgun Saturday Night, but basically when Shotgun became like a C show taped before or after Raw. But in Philadelphia, at the arena in Philadelphia, losing in just under 6 minutes to the Headbangers.
Yeah, this American Bulldogs version of the Pitbulls is cosplay of all the things they like about the Steiner brothers mixed in with the British Bulldogs.
It's a very good way of putting it. They do the Steiner's pose after hitting a couple moves. Their opponents, we should mention, Mike Rex. So we have Rex of the American Bulldogs and Mike Rex on the opposing team, who he really big Griff Garrison vibes from Mike.
So many Rexes. I couldn't believe how many Rexes were allowed in one match. I
was disappointed we did not get a Moondog Rex run-in. Dr. X dressed in all purple, including a purple mask, a terrible body, and he was an outlier on this show because the quote-unquote enhancement talent, and all some thoughts about that, the idea of these guys as enhancement talent as the show goes on, but all of them are like jacked and in good shape and look like athletes even if they're barely trained, other than Dr. X here, who is if a bag of milk was purple, that would be the description here of Dr. X.
Big Grimace vibes here.
Yes,
with, Dr. X.
If Grimace had lost some weight but had not toned his body.
So to be clear, the team is Mike Rex, spelled REXX, teaming
X,
with Dr. X. So I am going to call this team Triple X. There's 3 X's in this.
I feel like there may be some TNA. I feel like Frankie Kazarian's going to have a problem with this, or Chris Daniels.
So here we go. The Bulldogs with a lot of basic offense. They did the Steiner pose, like you mentioned. Bulldog, one of them does a double underhook and like lifts him up like he's going to do a double underhook suplex, and then just releases this guy. And Dr. X, he falls wildly to the mat. I was absolutely terrified. Just a lot of double teaming consisting of punches and knee lifts, very basic stuff.
They tried to do some intricate teamwork spots that were not working, no matter how much Gene Ligon said that these intricate teamwork spots were great. You mentioned that double underhook. This is where I feel like the rather gelatinous nature of Dr. X saved him. If he was more solid, he may have had some problems. X bails out and says they pulled his mask. This then leads Ted Webb, who has a lot of existential thoughts both on professional wrestling and life throughout the show as a play-by-play man, is really, really confused as to why wrestlers wear masks.
Jobbers work an arm briefly, but like one of the Bulldogs then hits a running clothesline to the corner, a sit-out power bomb, while his partner comes off the top rope with a flying elbow to get the win.
There was a lot of it. We'll see in other matches that are sort of like this, where on the show where it seems like it's an enhancement match, but it goes longer. and the enhancement talent gets more offense than they should. And I don't know if that's just padding time because they don't have a big enough roster to do a bunch of squash matches. But, it's not as if the Pit Bulls were great in later years, but they were really good at being the Pit Bulls. They had not quite mastered that here.
No, definitely not. We then hear MC Hammer's "You Can't Touch This" as the theme song for Curtis Thompson. Is this Firebreaker Chip?
This is Firebreaker Chip. He would also wrestle as U.S. Mal Curtis Thompson, as a postman, who is also somewhat of a Chippendale as a play on words. He was an American Mal, if you will, but it was U.S. Mal, M-A-I-L. But yes, my notes say one half of the WCW Special Forces. We are darn close to back-to-back weeks of the nascent days of each member of the Patriots, the WCW Special Forces, that being Firebreaker Chip and Todd Champion here, Todd Champion in All Japan Pro Wrestling, and then here in
just a couple weeks ago. This is crazy.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. But here it is, Curtis Thompson. It took me a little while to figure out he was a heel here in this match, taking on a man named Tom Atlas, who was in great shape himself here, and again looks more physically like he's more than a jobber, which I always have a problem with, because if you've got like an unknown guy in Curtis Thompson that you're trying to push, the guy he's wrestling in this match that is in theory enhancement, a showcase, should not look as physically impressive as he does.
This is a boring squash. Lots of punches and chin locks. Like, it felt like a babyface squash, like we saw that Tom Zank squash a couple weeks ago in Montreal, where it's like it just goes too long. But here, this is a heel squash that was hideously boring.
It went too long. It wasn't a squash. That's the problem. It's with a lot of these matches on this show that it's clear one guy is being pushed from the commentary, but the match is way too 50-50. Gene says that Curtis Thompson has changed recently, especially he went out to Portland. He's come back more mean. Apparently, he has been embroiled in a feud with Ranger Ross, which I can just imagine what that looked like. Pre-Firebreaker Chip taking on Ranger Ross. My notes just say it is incredible that all the little tricks to get heel heat, like your feet on the ropes while you have a reverse chin lock, this crowd, like Ian Rotten would say, man, this is a good crowd. I wish I would have had this on a Thursday night in Lafayette, Indiana. Like, it's that small, and yet the little tricks work. The few people that are in the crowd are so irate that Curtis Thompson is putting his feet on the ropes here.
He's cheating for the sake of cheating because he's easily in control of this match. Ted Webb on commentary says, quote, to quote his theme song, "Don't touch this." And I howled with laughter. That is not the quote.
I believe
Ted Webb.
It would be to paraphrase, not to quote. There's just a lot of bad stuff. Tries a crossbody splash in the corner and misses and lands stomach first on the buckle. Atlas misses a really weak running elbow in the corner. He submits. The end of the match is Curtis Thompson submitting Atlas with what first just looked like an arm bar, and then we get a replay and it's a chicken wing. This is a very chicken wing heavy show. This is really just nondescript.
He rams Atlas's shoulder into the buckle, and then he does it again, and commentary tells us Bursa Sacks are in trouble.
That's a great line. Oh, we should mention, by the way, the referee, was it for this match or the previous match, was Sal Corrente, who is just a guy that's been around wrestling forever as a wrestler, a manager, a promoter. He did the Wrestle reunion shows, some of which had those Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express matches that we talked about on the bonus feed, going all the way into like the 2010s. Those teams were still wrestling each other. So a guy that's just been around forever.
Back to this show, they run down the loop A lot of Carolina shows coming up.
A lot of high schools, but then they're running the Grady Cole Center, which has been around forever. Obviously, Jim Crockett Promotions, but like even in modern days, AEW has run Dynamite from there. Like I can't imagine how empty that must have been. The Grady Cole Center holds 3,000 people. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. I can't imagine what that looked like with like 30 or 40 people.
We're told that the champion of this promotion is the Tennessee Stud. It's Robert Fuller. All right.
He is, one of the champions. I'll tell us about another champion later on. But yes, I was hyped. The future Colonel Rob Parker, Robert Fuller, a man that you certainly have come around to, seeing him not as Colonel Robert Parker, seeing him in the
Robert Parker
era. The Colonel Rob Parker was just such a like ridiculous, over the top version of Robert Fuller. But yeah, anytime we're seeing Robert Fuller in a territory like this.
Yeah, don't forget, I came in late. I came in 96 because I had left. I had stopped watching wrestling from 92 to 96.
True. So you didn't get like Colonel Rob Parker managing Bunkhouse Buck and
I
Terry
got
fucking
useless.
Dick Slater.
Like useless second manager to Harlem Heat or
exactly.
something.
You got Colonel Robert Parker as, like you said, the co-manager of Harlem Heat in an on-again, off-again relationship with Sister Sherry. You can make a strong argument. It's one of the lowest moments of all of those acts' careers at the same time.
Yeah, and was never in the NWO universe at all. So like, and then just went away. So like, he was a zero to me as a manager, but getting to see him in his territory stints has been great. Even the late stage territory work we get from him is always a shining spot on some of these dying territories or territories that have no chance to succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Things that are dead on arrival. Here, after we get the loop, we get some local promos, which, all right, we're getting promos. Like, why are we not getting promos on this show? The Nasty Boys, again here, in between their WCW run, not that long after, I should say their first WCW run, after they had that awesome. Actually, no, this is before.
No, it's before. This is before the Steiners
match.
Halloween
Havoc 90. So this is just before they get their first big break and then knock it out of the park with the Steiner brothers, that match that you were at.
I was in attendance.
Here they're doing a local promo for the big Grady Cole Center, Charlotte, North Carolina show, where they will be taking on Ranger Ross and his tag team partner, Bo Rage or Bo Ragin.
Matt Borne cuts a promo as well. He's cut a promo on Ricky Steamboat. This is going to get me to Charlotte. I'll go see a Matt Borne Ricky Steamboat match.
He is crazy. It's a little scary. He says he's the role model of the 90s. And all I can say is if you watch the Matt Borne Dark Side of the Ring, and this feels like Matt Borne in some of the darker sides of Darker Side of the Ring. Like, I am legitimately a little concerned, a little freaked out here. Then Robert Fuller shows up. He's got his, as he says, beloved shiny belt, or he doesn't have it. He says it's locked up in a safe deposit box.
Yes, he won't lay his belt down for no thief, he says, so he doesn't have it with him. We'll see it later in the next match, in fact. As we go to the ring, it's Ricky, the Dragon Steamboat. We see wife Bonnie, the little dragon. They're all in attendance as he comes out to take on Bob Emery.
And Ricky Steamboat comes out to the, I can never remember the name of the song, but it's a classic song that the Chicago Bulls used during the Michael Jordan era for the introductions. Visually, like this show, like this building looks like a more low budget, significantly lower attended version of what like WCW syndicated shows looked like in 1990. It is so weird to see like prime era Ricky Steamboat wrestling in front of like 35 people, but he is full on Ricky Steamboat. We see him in this match against a very, very green, again, physically well put together, but very green Bob Emery. And man, like seeing Ricky Steamboat against someone at this low of a level is just sad and honestly very frustrating.
Yeah, just think 1 year prior to this match, he was having the legendary trilogy versus Ric Flair for the NWA title.
Yeah.
And now he's wrestling in front of 30 people against Bob Emery. What a difference a year makes.
Yeah. And then like a year later, he'd be back in WCW, teaming with Dustin Rhodes to win the WCW tag team title. So just a strange time where like his run was done in WCW in '89, and then WWF wasn't an option at that point just yet. Although, wouldn't he have that run as the Dragon coming up very soon before he went back to WCW? So this is let me pull up Ricky Steamboat's career on Cage.
I think that was 91. I think
it was late 90 into early 91 because again, in 91, towards the end of 91 was when he had the so let's see here. 1990, all he did was he did a lot of NAWA. Like there's 18 matches in the NAWA from February to
he was feuding for the title.
Yeah, with Matt Borne, who had just injured Steamboat's leg at this point. The only other thing Steamboat did in 1990 was one tour in September and October of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And then, he had there aren't too many guys in the in this era that would work for both WWF and WCW in the same calendar year. He had from March to October of 1991, he had exactly 100 matches in the WWF, culminating in October 20th. He lost to Skinner. He was doing a lot of matches with Skinner, but he loses to Skinner in his final match. And then it couldn't have been more than a month later. Yeah, like less than a month later, 28 days later, he's Dustin Rhodes' mystery partner subbing for the injured Barry Windham to defeat the Enforcers to win the tag team titles.
What a different business it is in 2025.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, how long does it take someone to get 100 matches now in
my
2025
God.
versus
Years.
like in just a couple of months here? That's crazy. Well, back to this match. We've got an inset promo from Fuller. He has the belt this time. He tells Steamboat that the song "No One Compares to You" is about him.
I was not expecting a Sinead O'Connor reference from Robert Fuller, but that's why he is a tremendous man.
Yeah, so that song is also called "Nothing Compares to You." Why nobody understands song titles on this show at all. Emery with some early offense. The crowd is making noise for the first time, and it's for Ricky Steamboat.
Emery has a lot of offense in this match. Like he's dominating, and then we always talk about Ricky Steamboat, how great he is at doing like little mini comebacks and getting shut down. But I was not expecting that here against Bob Emery. The thing that's wild though is his selling is so amazing still.
So
even
good.
Like he's in here with this guy who's just bad, and he's selling for him like he's wrestling Ric Flair.
It's a master class of someone fighting his ear. Like this performance was wasted on this man in this building.
Oh yeah.
Steamboat counters a pile driver attempt into a backdrop, hits the belly to back suplex, and the finish comes when Steamboat has Emery for a pile driver. But Steamboat falls backward. Emery lands on top of him, gets a 2 count, but Steamboat counters into a sunset flip pinning position and gets the 3.
I don't think this was the planned finish at all. Steamboat looked pissed. As pissed as Steamboat will look. He's professional.
Yes.
But Steamboat has him up in this pile driver position, and Emery just starts wildly kicking his legs around. Like it reminded me of Ken Kennedy, and how everyone would always complain about how you just always flail around when he'd go up for moves, and just would really frustrate guys. So Steamboat like falls back, and this guy lands full body weight like onto the sternum of Steamboat, and then Steamboat, being such a pro, manages to get him a sunset flip position. But he looks like he's trying to not show how frustrated he is as he's sitting there as the match is over, and you could tell he's frustrated. Like he knew that's the level he was in there with. But talk about a guy whose floor was so high. He could not put in a bad performance. He would have been completely within his rights and within his reason to do so here, but he could not let himself do that.
The Nasty Boys taking on the team of Ricky Wilson and tremendous jobber name of the week, Butch Malone.
Butch Malone, I will deduct a few points though, because there's really no excuse for a man named Butch Malone not having any facial hair whatsoever.
Oh yeah,
He
that's a
does
mess.
have a tremendous, terrible mullet. He is the most dime store Johnny Rich you've ever seen. He would not be a party boy. Ricky Wilson is actually in pretty good shape. Like he's really put together. I was trying to figure out if Ricky Wilson was actually a guy. I'm sure he's not, but is Rick Wilson here? Is he the Renegade?
I don't know. I'll let you
I'm looking it up right now.
dig into it while we go through this match. This was a lot of knobs in control, elbow drops, leg drops. Ricky Wilson trips Sags, and he's on offense. And this offense was awful. Wilson's trying to figure out how to do elbow drops to the leg. Just awkward and weird. Knobs is in, and Butch Malone goes to work on his knee. And it's also awkward and weird. These guys do not know how to do offense.
No, they don't know how to do. Each of them keeps trying to do a spinning toe hold. They are not Dory Funk or Terry Funk. I will give Butch Malone some credit for landing a standing splash to the leg. I feel like non-rotund baby faces have a better percentage of success on a splash to the leg than a regular splash. But that was about it.
Speaking of rotund, Knobs with the avalanche in the corner. And then Knobs hits a running power slam as Sags comes off the top with his flying elbow drop. And he pins Butch Malone with a foot on the chest. Very similar to the American Bulldogs finish that we saw in the opening match.
Extremely similar. Running power slam rather than the power bomb, or as Ted Webb called it, a super slam. He says for some reason he said a very 1990s style elbow drop. I don't know what that means at all here from Ted Webb. This was like the Nasty Boys were already the Nasty Boys, for better or worse.
Fully formed Nasty Boys.
No pity city, but otherwise they were. I mean, Sags was doing his bad top rope elbow drop. Knobs was loud and obnoxious, and was actually great at getting heat from these fans in the front row. Like he immediately spotted a couple kids, and he got everything out of them you could possibly imagine. Also in this match, by the way, Sags has a headlock on, and Ted Webb just starts questioning the meaning and existence of life. Like he goes full existential here, and Gene Ligon, who really does not have much to say on this show, had no idea how to handle that whatsoever.
No, Gene Ligon just trying to answer ridiculous questions from Ted Webb. Like that whole exchange with Dr. X and the mask. Why would a guy wear a mask? Well, maybe he doesn't want anyone to know who he is.
Yeah, that's really, but the only other logical answer, by the way, I just checked. Ricky Wilson was not the Renegade. I will say from a look standpoint, it's if Tom Pritchard took steroids, that's what he would look like.
Maniac Matt Borne versus David Isley. We mentioned the Great Dark Side of the Ring on Matt Borne. If you haven't seen it, go out of your way to see that. Borne, for those who haven't seen it or don't know Matt Borne, you would know him from a famous run in the Portland territory. You would know him as Doink the Clown. And where else would you know him from in WCW?
You would, if you're properly cultured and have great taste in professional wrestling, you would know him as Big Josh, 1/3 of the 6-man tag team champions in WCW, the purveyor of the Northern Exposure, one of the greatest professional wrestling moves of all time and all its variations.
That's right. And you will hear us reference any sort of earthquake maneuver bonsai drop as Northern Exposures in honor of Big Josh.
If your South is dropping south, it is a Northern Exposure. That's what I say. He is taking out a man that they talked up all throughout the show. He must have been a friend, a family member of either Ted Webb or Gene Ligon, or the promoters here. David Isley, who looks very much like Jumpin' Joey Maggs of WCW fame, if you can call it that. He's just a guy in short black tights. Both of these men are in short black tights, but Isley, not a great look. He's got a mullet. At least these two men did not wear the same color boots. We at least had white boots on Isley, black boots, and black knee pads on Matt Borne.
Still, of all the colors, David Isley, you need to figure out what Matt Borne's wearing and wear something different.
Yes.
Borne with some good standing strikes. Like he hits a really nice belly-to-belly suplex.
Great intensity. Matt Borne, a great example of what could have been as far as if he could have held himself together. He had a lot of things that make a good wrestler.
There's two guys who are like, you watch the show, you're like, oh, there's two guys that are wrestlers. That's Ricky Steamboat and Matt Borne, and I would like to see them wrestle.
Yes, and one more guy who we'll see in the main event.
Oh, of course, yes, the star of the show. We'll get there later.
But yeah, it's clear who the star of this match is. It's Matt Borne. There's a running shoulder block leapfrog, and then we get a drop hold from David Isley that Ted Webb first calls a leg dive and then corrects himself to call it a leg whip when, as I said, it was obviously a drop hold. A great variation on my favorite territory or late stage post territory era wrestling where an announcer just makes up move names. He was so sure that he corrected his initial thing correctly when both were in fact wrong.
Yes, that's the new best thing is making up a name for a move and then correcting yourself with another incorrect name for the move. That's next level stuff.
It is a rarity.
So, Borne just swats away a dropkick attempt from Isley, hits a swinging neck breaker.
These dropkick attempts, Isley hits one and then misses the second one. They're the weirdest looking dropkicks you've ever seen. They're like rounding off to the side, and the way he goes into it, you think he's going to get high, but he barely gets like above the belly button. It was terrible. Why were they hyping up David Isley so much throughout this show? Like, of all the jobbers not named Dr. X, he was the least impressive. And there were some very unimpressive guys on this show.
Borne puts on the second chicken wing of this episode of television with a crossface for the submission victory.
Nothing says 1990s professional wrestling like multiple wrestlers using a chicken wing as a finish here on the show.
So we've had... Of the matches we had a top rope elbow drop finish in 2 of the matches, and we've had a chicken wing finish in 2 of the matches. Just if people were wondering how the role of a producer evolved in wrestling.
Also, if you were to tell me that there were 2 chicken wing finishes, 2 top rope move finishes on the show, and that Ricky Steamboat was on the show, and that none of those would have been executed by Ricky Steamboat.
None, 0.
If I was a betting man, I would be a little bit lighter on the wallet. We come back from break for our main event of the show.
Time.
Yeah. It is Dean Malenko teaming with Mark Fleming, who we saw in the opening match go 30 minutes with Minoru Suzuki on that UWF show that we reviewed, which is right around the same time period. Again, it's always so weird. It's like this combination of guys wrestling in Japan and then wrestling for the most nondescript, trying to be real TV wrestling promotions in the U.S. They're teaming with a man who, when he first came out to the ring, I'm like, is that Paul Roma? And then they announced him as Vince Torelli. I'm like, wait, is that Shoulders Torelli? Wait, no, it's not. It is a young, green, pre-pancreas Ken Shamrock. What a trio of men here.
Yes, I was racking my brain trying to think, when did we last see Vince Torelli? It was a show with I think Chris Chavis was also on that show, The Future Tatanka. I cannot remember.
It wasn't NAWA, but it was a very similar one of these, like,
so similar. Then I was like going down the list.
1990, trying to be a TV promotion. So what a trio of men. Like, it's also cool to see Dean Malenko here because we've seen late 80s Dean and Joe Malenko in All Japan, a match against very late stage British Bulldogs when Dynamite Kid could barely get in the ring. So these 3 men are taking on Hollywood Ted Landell.
Tommy Landell. Hollywood Tommy Landell.
Ted, Tommy. This is a This is a Tom Phillips Grisham situation, or
Yeah,
Todd
sure.
Phillips Grisham situation. I like that I got the Todd wrong too. That's how much they matter. Taking on the Ring Lords from Little Chicago. They are Rock and Roll Express knockoffs. They are heels. They look like the Rock and Roll Express, but they have mustaches. They are Rick Slaggle and Speedy Gonzalez.
What is Little Chicago?
I was like, is this like a little Tokyo from Chicago sort of situation here? There's a little bit of AWA in the NAWA.
My goodness, if you what
Are you
is
sure, by the way, that Tommy Landell is not a young Brian Costello?
we are not sure on that. Definitely did not look that up, but I was laughing hysterically here because I had to rewind, because first I was like, what is my notes just feverishly say Little Chicago ? In all caps, and then we're told the Ring Lords, Speedy Gonzalez, and he's announced as Rick Swaggle. And then the ring announcer is immediately corrected by this wrestler that his name is Rick Slagle, not Swaggle.
So Tommy Landell, also known as Bull Brannigan and Bulldog Brannigan, he wrestled from 1979 to 1983. He looked so young, by the way, but he wrestled from 1979 to 1983 in Georgia, NWA Tri-State, I believe, Jim Crockett Promotions, a little bit of Mid-South maybe. And then he did not wrestle from August 19th, 1983 until joining the NAWA in a losing effort, his first match back in almost 7 years, losing to Ricky Steamboat in February of 1990.
Jeez. So we get it. We had like a confrontation here too between Slagle, don't call me Swaggle, and Fuentes, our ring announcer. Like he's like the ring announcer is like standing up to this guy, like, I'll announce you however I want to announce you. Like, what are we doing here?
And again, this match will follow the theme of a lot of these matches earlier on in the show, where they ostensibly are stars against enhancement talent, and yet the enhancement talent gets way too much offense. Dean Malenko looks exactly like Dean Malenko, doing awesome Dean Malenko things. Like people, like you forget, because he burst out of the scene, in ECW, like 94 or 95, and then quickly to WCW and that whole run. Forget how long he was every bit as good Dean Malenko, even going back into the late 80s or 1990.
Dean Malenko here is operating at a completely different speed than every other wrestler on this show.
Yeah.
This was awesome. We always talk about guys who are in HD while everyone else is in standard definition. This is Dean Malenko here. This guy is all over the place. Awesome shoulder block, one of the best shoulder blocks I can remember seeing.
Yeah.
And this is just an incredible hot start. Hits a great belly to belly. And then Fleming into the corner, and they double team him. He tags out, and Malenko's back in, hits a perfect drop kick.
Beautiful drop kick.
Vince Torelli comes in. Ken Shamrock. He catches a cross-body attempt. He's holding his opponent in his arms as Malenko drop kicks the guy's back, and Torelli hits a fall-away slam. This was a pretty innovative double team move.
It was. It was funny too. Like Ted Webb did not know what to call it, and then Gene Ligon's like, "Oh, it's a drop kick into a fall-away slam."
Yes, it was identified originally as, quote, a reverse back slam.
Yes, reverse back slam. I'm just lucky he didn't call it a super slam. We then get again this very green but physically impressive Vince Torelli, Ken Shamrock with a snap suplex. The Ring Lords try to do a double team of some sort to Vince Torelli, and Vince just runs into him, and then time stops. So Torelli just grabs like a shoot takeover and hits a release fisherman suplex.
This is a taped show, by the way.
There was not a lot of editing. They may not have had the budget for editors.
But yeah, this was this double team move attempt fails in spectacular fashion. And then just more terrible offense from Torelli. Dean tags back in, thank God, hits another drop kick, and the finish comes when Dean Malenko looks like he's going for a backdrop, but instead he falls down to his back, squashing one of the ring lords, and he gets the pin.
This was basically like a weird release Northern Lights suplex, almost just like an overhead throw. It was odd. Gets the win, and then we see that their advisor, who they never mentioned was outside of the ring until after the match. So let's Mark Fleming, the future Ken Shamrock, and Dean Malenko are managed by number one Paul Jones. What a bizarre
future promoter of this territory.
Yeah, there you go. So then from there, we end the show. We go to Ted in front of the backdrop. They didn't do anywhere near enough promos for this show, but Ted is in front of the backdrop with Ranger Ross and Bo Rajan. Ranger Ross is a terrible promo who does not know when to stop talking. Bo Rajan seemed like a delightful man, but had zero charisma. Basically, like Ted Webb has to end this promo as Ranger Ross is ranting about his mom making him food. He did not want to leave. This was not good. Not a good way to talk us into the building.
No, they call out some tag teams. This was a bad promo. We're told, though, that there will be a tag team tournament coming up at some point. And that's how the show goes off the air. Favorite thing on this show for you, and why is it Dean Malenko?
It's Dean Malenko for sure, because you got to do Dean Malenko things. Seeing Mark Fleming, who I had no expectation of ever seeing again after seeing him in that 30-minute draw with Minoru Suzuki. Young Ken Shamrock was fascinating. So that was very cool as well. Again, Ricky Steamboat.
Steamboat, honorable mention. Yeah.
Matt Borne looking insane, but looking good. I can tell you right now, it's not my least favorite thing on the show, but to me, the death of this promotion is completely justified in that you watch the men on this show. They never did a singles match between Dean Malenko and Ricky Steamboat. You had those two men on the roster and you didn't do it. Like, it's two guys who are all-time greats that you think of their paths not really ever crossing. That an opportunity here to make it happen. They didn't. I looked it up. Those two men never had a singles match. The only time they were ever in the ring with each other was during the first round of the NWA Tag Title Tournament in WCW in June of 1992, when it was Dean and Joe Malenko making a one-off appearance wrestling Nikita Koloff and Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, too, because of the two, they are the two guys on this show who were doing more than was warranted.
Yes.
And you can't watch this show and not say, I want Ricky Steamboat versus Matt Borne. I want Ricky Steamboat versus Dean Malenko.
Yes.
And I want that now. Yes.
Yes. Or even Dean Malenko.
Crime that we didn't have that.
Dean against Matt Borne would have certainly been interesting as well. I also tried to find out, like, if Bo Rajan, if there's anything like about him. He's listed on all these NAWA TV tapings, but he's not clickable. So I assume he did not do anything else. Yeah, it's never a good sign if you're not clickable on Cage Match.
Not a good sign. Any worst thing on the show for you?
For me, it's how long or how much offense some of these enhancement talent, some of these jobbers, how much offense they got. By far, the worst performance on this show was Bob Emery against Ricky Steamboat. I was offended that Ricky Steamboat had to be in the ring in front of 30 people against someone that bad. Again, like, if it had been against Dean Malenko, if it had been against Matt Borne, if it had even been, against a young Vince Torelli, that certainly would have been interesting. But this was wasted talent.
Honorable mention to the Ring Lords trying to double team Torelli.
That was the worst spot on the show by far, and one of the worst spots I've seen in a long time for this podcast.
Not super offensive. Not a show that would make me crave to see more of this territory in 1990. So remember what you've come off of seeing in 1989 on the major promotions, right? Major promotions have delivered some of the best wrestling of all time after 1989, and this is what you're watching. It's not offensive, but it's also like trying. It's in a weird spot between territorial wrestling and national wrestling, and it's just never this formula was never going to work. They just were never going to have the stars to do it.
No, what were you trying to accomplish at this point? You had WCW, obviously in 1990, the in-ring had gone down, but you had an all-time great year in 1989 from an in-ring standpoint. The WWF had probably their best year ever from a storytelling standpoint, and a business success standpoint to that time. Like what hole, what void was this filling?
No, so just really weird. So not surprised it started in 90, was gone by 92. And and I'm curious to see if Mike has any thoughts on it when you talk to him.
Absolutely.
The next big audio nightmare. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Now, we've mentioned our bonus feed a couple of times. Don't forget that you can get over 200 more episodes of this podcast than you've heard at all. If you haven't subscribed, you go over there for $5, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. You go over there, $5. It unlocks over 200 bonus episodes you haven't heard before, audio or video, however you consume your podcast, both available over at the Patreon. And I mentioned video because if you're listening to the free feed right now and you want to consume your podcast via video podcast, the YouTube channel is up and running for Wrestling at Random. Search for Wrestling at Random Podcast, and you can get the video version of the podcast where you saw Adam throughout this podcast wearing a Wrestling at Random t-shirt.
Yes, a Wrestling at Random t-shirt that is available on one of the tiers of the bonus feed at patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom.
Absolutely. And even if you don't consume your podcast through the video medium, throwing us a like and subscribe helps us work the algorithm so other wrestling fans can find the show. So we really appreciate it. It's an easy way to support the show. If you can't support us financially in these times, we totally understand. The other way to support the show is to remain subscribed through your podcatcher of choice and tell your wrestling fan friends about the show. We rely on your word of mouth to continue to spread the word. We see the new folks joining and listening and interacting with the show. If you want to interact with the show as well, you can. Social media is the best way to do that. We're on all the platforms at Wrestle at Random. So make sure that you're following us everywhere: Blue Sky, Threads, X, Instagram, wherever you are on social media. We are there at Wrestle at Random. Best way to interact with the show. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I will say thank you, Randomizer. This wasn't the best show we've ever seen. It certainly wasn't the worst, but I love the fact that not just our intentionalizers on the bonus feed, but that the randomizers 6 seasons in can still find a territory that neither of us have ever seen before and expose us to yet more professional wrestling.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again